homestead friend Megan here from the blog ninoskamade.com and Ninoska Homestead, and today I am whipping up a batch of my blueberry lemon cream cheese quick bread. It's a mouthful, but it is so good, and trust me, once it hits your mouth, you won't care how long the name is. This is a bread that is kind of a denser dough. It has like a cream cheese swirly filling in it, plus some fresh blueberries, and it is just like all of the right notes. Granted, it's not springtime right now. At the time of recording this, it's the beginning of January, but I could do with a little sunshine in my life. So I've got some lemons, I've got some blueberries. This is a light and bright flavored quick bread that really balances itself well. It's got the bright tartness of the lemons, plus the sweetness of the blueberries, plus that really fun cheesecake-like essence of the cream cheese. It's delicious. Let me tell you how to make it, and then I'm gonna show you. So to make this quick bread, you are going to need butter, sugar, eggs, Greek yogurt, vanilla, lemons, blueberries, flour, baking powder, and vanilla. So easy. To make the cream cheese filling, we're gonna need sugar, egg whites, and cream cheese. Now before I turn you loose on this recipe, I wanna give you a few quick tips that I think make it go a little bit better. First, I wanna share that I have had my ingredients sitting out at room temperature for about 30 minutes before I started baking. It's really important when you're baking this bread that everything is just kind of not too cold, otherwise it's gonna be really hard to mix it, even though I'm using my stand mixer behind me here. Everything is room temperature, including the eggs, including the butter, the cream cheese, all of it. And I also wanna mention that I designed this recipe to make either 2 loaves of quick bread or 1 loaf of quick bread and then a pan of a dozen muffins. My kids love grab and go muffins, so for us this works really well, but I kind of am a fan of the bread, so I'm doing both. Today I'm gonna do, instead of 2 loaves, which is what the recipe says, I'm going to do 1 loaf and 12 muffins. I also recommend trying different flours with this recipe. I have made this with Bob's 1-to-1 gluten-free flour mix. I feel like when I did this that it was a really dense, wet kind of a quick bread. It wasn't like the light, pillowy, fluffy. I talk with my hands a lot. It wasn't like what I really, it's not like the original recipe is what I'm trying to say. So if you want to play around with the different flour substitutes, do it. I have. It tastes delicious. The texture is going to be different. If you're following along on my blog, ninoskamade.com, if you've got the recipe pulled up there, I am doing something a little different today. I have started using einkorn flour for my family instead of traditional white flours or all-purpose flours. Okay, this is the one that I am using. This is by Jovial Foods, and I got it off of their website. I don't get any kickback from this. This is not like an advertisement or anything, but this is an all-purpose white einkorn flour, and I feel like it does a really nice job of going well in cake recipes and bread recipes without overpowering it. Sometimes I've tried einkorn flours and they've been a little bit too textury, didn't like them, but this is a really good one, and I've switched us all over because I have a gluten sensitivity. 2 of my kids have gluten sensitivities, and we notice it in our skin. My kids start to get that little bird skin rash on the backs of their arms and on their thighs, and I get brain fog, my joints hurt, like it's just a mess. So I try to stay away from flour for the most part, but I have found that when I use a primitive grain like einkorn, or I ferment the dough like in sourdough, I can eat some of it without noticing an issue. So that's my reasoning for switching to einkorn. One last tip I want to share before we get started is if you don't have fresh blueberries, use frozen. If you don't have fresh lemons, use lemon juice. No big deal. I'm going to preheat my oven to 350 degrees, and I have already prepared a muffin tin and a loaf pan. You'll see them here in a second. In a stand mixer, I'm going to combine the sugar and the butter, and I'm gonna mix it until it's really light and fluffy. This takes about 2 minutes. This is kind of a longer process, but I found that when I really let them fully incorporate, it makes a lighter, fluffier loaf, which is what we all want. Next, I'm going to start adding the eggs in one at a time. There's 4 eggs. And each time I add one in, I'm gonna really beat them in really well. I'm going to mix in the flour and the baking powder until just combined, and I don't wanna overmix it because I don't wanna pop all of these little air bubbles that have caused the pillowy texture for this dough. I'm gonna fold in the blueberries, and then I'm gonna place the batter into my prepared pans. In the same mixing bowl, the dirty one, I'm not even gonna have to wash it, I'm going to add the cream cheese and the egg whites and the sugar. I'm going to whip that for several minutes until it's light and fluffy. And then I'm going to add a little bit of lemon zest and a little bit of lemon juice. I'm gonna dollop the cream cheese mixture over the batter, and then I'm gonna swirl it in with a knife. These are going to bake at 350 degrees. The loaf will go for about 75 minutes, depending on your oven. My oven is not consistent. The temperature's kind of all over the place, so I have to watch it pretty closely. We want the loaf to reach about 205 degrees internal temperature. The muffins are going to bake for about 20 to 25 minutes. Come with me, let's get started. First, I'm going to cream the butter and the sugar until it's light and fluffy. This is going to take about 2 minutes. The butter and sugar have been mixing for about 2 minutes, and now the crystals of the sugar have pretty much broken down. It's time to add the eggs one at a time. I always go ahead and crack my eggs into a bowl just so that I don't get any little pieces of shell in my batter. I'm going to add them one at a time, giving them about 30 seconds in between each addition to fully incorporate. Check out how with each addition of eggs, this is going to change the batter. Right now you're looking at just the sugar and the butter, and it's kind of like a fluffy kinetic sand looking dough. And now I'm going to add the eggs, and you can see how it goes from being kind of a soft yellow color to a little bit more gold, and then eventually it's going to look kind of like a copper colored pudding. Now I'm going to add the yogurt all at once and the Madagascar bourbon vanilla. I'm giving it a generous teaspoon. This is a DIY recipe that I use to save a little bit of money by buying my own vanilla beans and adding them to bourbon. Highly recommend doing this. It's on my Instagram account if you want to grab the recipe. See if you can catch my mistake here. Before I cut these lemons in half, I was supposed to zest them to add the zest to this quick bread batter. Well, whoops, I didn't, and when I tried to go back and do it later, it looked super awkward, so I didn't even include it. But what I'm doing here is I'm removing the seeds, and then I'm adding that lemon juice a little bit to the bread batter and then a little bit to the filling. I folded in the blueberries, and now I'm going to add them to my prepared dishes. I went ahead and lined everything with parchment paper, and I've got it clipped to the sides just so that the batter doesn't accidentally pull it down in upon itself. So I'm adding about 1/4 of the batter to the bottom of this pan, and then I'm going to layer it with the cream cheese mixture, followed by another layer of batter. You'll see my cream cheese mixture here in a second. I lined a muffin tin with parchment liners. These are non-stick and super convenient. And I'm just going to use a 2-inch dough scoop to add an even amount of batter to each of the compartments. When I said that I was going to use the same dirty bowl that I mixed up the bread batter in to do the cream cheese filling, I was not pulling your leg. I do not like to do more dishes than I have to. So into the bowl goes the egg whites, the cream cheese, a little bit of lemon juice, and the sugar. And I'm going to whisk it for about 4 minutes until I don't see any little chunks of cream cheese anymore, because nobody wants to bite into a little chunk of cream cheese. If you're having that problem, mix it longer. Okay, so here's the deal. This cream cheese filling is going to be the most frustrating part and the messiest part of this whole recipe experience. The goal is to have a really pretty marbled texture on the top of these, but in reality, if that doesn't happen for you, don't worry about it. It's not gonna happen for me today. I can already tell before we've even got these in the oven that it won't. I have reserved a few blueberries from when I was making the batter, and I'm going to put fresh blueberries on top, and it's going to really obstruct the view and make everything look prettier, even though my marble isn't just like the strongest marbling game you've ever seen. Now that they have their blueberries on top, they are ready to go in the oven. The loaf pan is going to bake for about 75 minutes or until it reaches 205 degrees, and the muffins are going to go for about 25 minutes. Do the toothpick test if you're not sure if they're done or not. All right, Homestead friends, I hope you enjoyed this recipe, and if you liked it, be sure to leave me a comment or find me on Instagram and tell me. My handle is Ninaska Homestead, and find me on my blog, ninoskame.com. That's where you can get the full recipe along with any tips and tricks that might be helpful. Be sure to check out my other videos on YouTube. I talk about sourdough, gardening. I'm just getting my channel started at the time of recording this, so I plan to have a lot more gardening tips and tricks, as well as how to prepare venison and all kinds of homesteading recipes. Thanks for taking the time today to watch this, and I hope you have a wonderful afternoon.